Welcome to Mind Research Rewired. We unveil scientific truths to transform confusion into clear thinking. Unlock a sharper, more effective you based on proven research. Subscribe now and elevate your life.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into a really fascinating historical perspective on this very question. We're looking at a paper from, get this, April 1891.
Wow, way back.
Right. It's titled The Question of Duality of Mind, and it's by Meade Bache.
Ah, yes, Bache. This paper, it was published in the Monist.
Yeah.
A pretty serious journal, and you can still find it on JSA Store. It's a brilliant example of early psychological thinking.
In what way?
Well, it was a time when psychology was really trying to ground itself in physiology, moving away from purely philosophical or sometimes, frankly, unscientific ideas about the mind. Bache was right there pushing for that scientific basis.
Okay, so our mission today isn't just a dusty history lesson. It's really to unpack Bache's arguments, figure out how he saw these different levels of consciousness, and maybe see how these turn-of-the-century scientific debates offer insights that are surprisingly relevant even now.
Definitely. His distinctions still give us a useful framework, I think.
All right, so let's jump in. What was Bache's core premise? What idea was he really challenging right from the start?
Okay, so Bache basically asserts that for psychology to be, fruitful, to actually get somewhere, it has to be studied based on physiology, the physical body, the brain.
Right.
And he directly confronts this persistent idea of a dual nature of the mind or the soul. He just argues it's scientifically, untenable.
So even if we act in ways that seem contradictory, like having higher and lower tendencies.
Exactly. He'd say, sure, people struggle morally, they have conflicting desires, but that doesn't mean they're mentally dual if they're physiologically single.
Yeah.
One body, one integrated system, even if it's complex.
So that popular notion, the sort of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde idea, which really captures the imagination, Bache says no.
Pretty much, yeah. From his scientific standpoint, he saw cases like that not as two separate minds fighting, but as a phase of physical, physiological, and psychical decline.
Yeah.
It leads to what he, citing Dr. Henry Maudsley, called a profound retrograde metamorphosis.
A retrograde metamorphosis. Sounds serious.
It is. It's where willpower weakens, the whole person sort of degenerates. Now, it might look like duality to someone watching, but Bache argues it's actually a unified process of decline.
Okay.
He actually says it's surprising that any scientific thinker would even consider the possibility of changed mental phenomena without assuming there must be changed physical and physiological conditions underlying it.
That's a really strong physiological stance for the time. So he wasn't just arguing against a vague popular idea then. Was he responding to specific academic theories too?
Oh, absolutely. He was specifically taking on a contemporary view from another scholar, Max Dessoir.
Dessoir. Okay, tell us about him and his doctrine of double consciousness.
Right. So Dessoir had written an article in the same journal, The Monist, just a bit earlier, called The Magic Mirror. And in it, he proposed this doctrine of the double consciousness of the human soul, or sometimes he called it the double ego.
A double ego. What was his evidence for that?
He presented observations, case studies really, where people seem to perform actions without being fully aware of them, but the actions themselves seem to require some level of consciousness and even memory.
Like what kind of actions?
Well, classic examples like reading aloud coherently with proper emphasis and everything, while your conscious mind is completely elsewhere thinking about something totally different.
I think we've all done that to some extent.
Right. Or he cited an English psychologist, a Mr. Barkworth, who could apparently add up long columns of figures, like bookkeeping, really quickly and accurately while taking part in an animated debate, supposedly without diverting his main attention.
Wow. Okay. Adding figures during a debate. That does sound like two things happening at once. So Dessoir saw this as proof.
He did. He saw it as evidence for what he called unconscious intelligence and unconscious memory. He suggested this pointed to a kind of second personality or double ego operating beneath the surface. He used terms like superconsciousness for the normal self and subconsciousness for this hidden layer.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting then, because Bache agrees some unconscious stuff happens, but he draws lines in the sand, doesn't he? He makes these crucial distinctions. What are subconsciousness and unconscious cerebration according to Bache? How did he see them differently?
Exactly. This is key to Bache's argument. He actually accepts the idea of subconsciousness, distinguishing it from superconsciousness, which is just our normal everyday self-awareness.
Okay.
For Bache, subconsciousness is more like a latent consciousness. He described it as a passive tablet where impressions get stored. They're recorded, maybe from our senses or thoughts, but they might never actually rise up into our self-conscious awareness. It's linked to the brain's cell storage, like a vast passive archive.
A passive archive. Okay, so what's unconscious cerebration then? How is that different?
Right. Bache argues that Dessoir confuses that passive subconsciousness with something else entirely, unconscious cerebration. And for Bache, unconscious cerebration is fundamentally active. It's an active faculty of the brain.
Active how?
It can take any impressions stored in the brain, whether they were logged subconsciously or were part of our conscious thoughts, and it can actively work on them, process them, evolve new thoughts from them. And the crucial part is, the person might remain completely unaware of this processing until the resulting thought is suddenly, as Bache puts it, presented to him as a free gift.
Like an idea just popping into your head.
Exactly. It could happen while you're awake, maybe thinking about something else entirely, or even during sleep. Sometimes it might anticipate thoughts you'll have later that day, or feel like a sudden revelation or insight.
Okay, so let me see if I've got this. Subconsciousness is like the passive memory bank, just holding information. Unconscious cerebration is like a background processor, actively working on that information, sometimes delivering results to our conscious mind. Is that roughly it?
That's a great way to put it. Passivity versus activity is the core distinction. Subconsciousness receives unconscious cerebration processes and generates.
And crucially, for Bache, accepting these two different types of unconscious processes doesn't force you to accept a dual mentality or a double ego.
Precisely. He uses a really clear analogy. He says, look, we recognize we have both voluntary muscles we control consciously and involuntary muscles like our heart that work automatically. But nobody claims we're physically dual because of that.
Right.
So, similarly, just because we have both self-consciousness, our voluntary mental focus, and unconscious cerebration, the brain's background processing, coexisting, it doesn't imply we have a double ego.
Okay, that makes sense.
He emphasizes that while these background processes are always happening, their results, the products of unconscious cerebration, don't always bubble up into our awareness right away. Often, any contribution it makes to our conscious thought happens over a long period. It's not typically involved in our immediate moment-to-moment thinking, partly because it might be working on stuff entirely alien to what we're consciously focused on.
That's fascinating. So if we don't have this double ego, how does Bache explain those really striking moments, like Mr. Barkworth adding figures while debating? It looks like two conscious processes running in parallel.
Bache offers what he calls a simple and complete explanation. He argues those processes are not absolutely simultaneous. They just happen so close together, so rapidly one after the other, that they appear simultaneous to us.
Ah, an illusion of simultaneity.
Exactly. He uses the analogy of synchronous multiple telegraphy, where multiple signals could be sent down the same wire by interleaving them very quickly. Each signal is discrete, a make and break, but it creates the impression of continuous, simultaneous communication. He suggests our will directs the flow of our conscious attention, the nerve force shifting focus between different subjects or tasks successively, but just incredibly fast. So fast, it feels like we're doing them at the same time.
And the time spent on each thought would vary.
Yeah, depending on how difficult the task is, how much focus it needs. But ultimately, Bache insists this rapid switching is will-directed thought. Even in sleep, he thinks the will is still trying, albeit imperfectly, to direct the flow of thought.
This framework also helps explain those more common everyday things, doesn't it? Like, you're deep in thought walking home and suddenly realize you've walked right past your street, or reading a page and having zero memory of it.
Yes, exactly. According to Bache, that's not some separate automaton taking over your body like a hidden pilot.
Right.
It's simply that you forgot to consciously direct your movements. Or maybe you didn't think it was necessary at that moment, because your habitual self, what he sometimes calls our automaton, is usually perfectly capable of handling routine tasks like walking or basic reading mechanics.
So our habits take the wheel when our conscious mind is busy elsewhere.
Pretty much. He notes that as people get older, for instance, their conscious attention might need to focus more intensely on single actions, perhaps because those automatic habitual functions become a bit less efficient.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift focus slightly to dreams. Dessoir, the proponent of the double ego, suggested that dreams, and maybe other altered states, are ruled by a consciousness different from the normal consciousness. What was Bache's take on dreams?
Well, Bache acknowledges that memory connections can definitely form and operate within dreams. But he argues the main difference isn't so much a fundamentally modified consciousness, but rather modified conscientiousness.
Modified conscientiousness. What does he mean by that?
He suggests it's due to a temporary suspension of the usual normal coordination between different nerve centers in the brain during sleep. Things aren't integrated the way they are when we're awake. But even so, he maintains that the will is still active, still striving to direct thought, just imperfectly, without the usual checks and balances.
Okay, so still a unified system, just working differently. And didn't Bache offer a really personal example to illustrate how this subconscious information can work even over long periods? His own dream.
He did. It's a fantastic part of the paper. He uses his own experience as, he says, an admirable example of how subconscious information can eventually surface. He recounts this recurring dream he had for years.
Tell us about it.
He dreamed repeatedly about a specific landscape. Rocky escarpments partially covered with trees, with a plain as foreground. Very specific topographical detail. And in the dream, a carriage would arrive to take him home after a day of surveying work.
Okay.
But the dream always left him with this vivid, really uncomfortable feeling that he had neglected something, that there was some important surveying work he hadn't finished.
Like a nagging guilt dream.
Exactly. And despite trying really hard in his waking life to remember any unfinished surveys, searching his memory, he couldn't place it. Yet the dream kept coming back, year after year.
Wow. Did he know if the dream was consistent?
Yes. He actually described it in detail to a family member while it was still recurring, specifically so they could verify later if the details remained the same each time it happened. And they did.
Okay, so this went on for years. How did it finally get resolved? Did he consciously figure it out?
No, that's the fascinating part. He says the mystery was solved without any special effort towards the solution on his part. It just surfaced.
So what was the truth behind this persistent dream? What was the unfinished work?
It turned out to be a genuine piece of topographical work he'd been assigned years earlier, surveying about 100 square miles of terrain that perfectly matched the dream landscape.
No way.
Yes. And crucially, he remembered he'd been prevented from finishing it because he received orders that suddenly sent him away from that area, off to Florida and other distant assignments.
Ah, so it was unfinished, but not through his neglect.
Exactly. He even recalled specific details, like having been accompanied by the famous geologist Professor James D. Dana on parts of that very survey, and Dana being very interested in it. He specifically remembered planning how he was going to survey a tricky 900-foot ridge covered in dense trees in that area.
That's incredible detail to suddenly recall. How long did this whole process take?
Get this. The first time he had the dream was about 7 years after he'd been abruptly pulled off that survey job.
7 years.
And then took about 2 more years of the dream recurring before the solution finally surfaced in his waking consciousness.
9 years total from the event to the final conscious realization.
Right. And once the penny dropped, once he understood what the dream was about, he told his family confidant, "I shall never have that dream again." And he never did. The mystery with which the uncoordinated ego struggled, as he put it, was solved.
So this amazing story, this incredibly long incubation of forgotten information, its persistence in dreams, and its eventual emergence. How did Bache use this to counter Dessoir's dual mind idea? What was his ultimate point?
He used it precisely to demonstrate what he called the possibility of subconscious record remaining for years dormant, proceeding at last through unconscious cerebration to reach conscious cerebration.
Connecting all his concepts.
Exactly. First, the information surfaced imperfectly in sleep, driven by that active unconscious cerebration working on the dormant subconscious record. Then finally, it broke through into his waking mind, where the judgment seat of coordinated faculties, his normal conscious reasoning, could finally process and understand it.
So it shows the unified mind at work, integrating deeply buried information over time, not two separate minds.
Precisely. It highlights the incredible complexity and the deep integrated storage and processing power of a single mind, not some kind of hidden split personality.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive into the thinking of the late 19th century. And yet, like you said, it feels remarkably relevant to how we think about our own minds today, doesn't it?
It really does. It's such a powerful reminder that our minds are incredibly complex systems, constantly processing, integrating, organizing information, much of it happening completely outside our conscious awareness.
Yeah.
Bache's paper reminds us that this integration of experiences, memories, thoughts, it's a continuous dynamic process. It's less about finding some separate hidden self and more about understanding the intricate interconnected functions of one single powerful mind.
A mind where even deeply buried, dormant information can eventually work its way to the surface and find its place in our conscious understanding.
Exactly.
So for you, the listener, maybe something to think about. If our minds are constantly doing this background processing, connecting dots on information we might not even remember having, what other unfinished topography from your own life might be waiting in your subconscious archives? What might be slowly working its way towards your conscious awareness through that hidden, active process of unconscious cerebration?
That's a great question.
And maybe, how might understanding these kinds of nuanced distinctions between passive storage and active background processing change how you think about learning or solving problems, or even how you interpret the strange narratives of your own dreams?
Yes, that is something for all of us to think about. We have come to the end of Deep Dive into Bache's paper. If you like the content of our podcast and learned something useful, please subscribe to support our channel. We will continue to unveil cutting-edge scientific papers to elevate your daily life. Thank you.